Hello, hello, merhaba. Can you hear me and see me? Good. So, today I'm planning to finish the match between Euwe and Alekhine and 1935. So, two games left, and before the game 29, Max Euwe was leading +1, and Alekhine has white. And in previous games, Max Euwe played e5, but he lost in Vienna game in this line. So he made very unusual preparation and played Alekhine defense against Alekhine, knight f6. Bravo. Very brave decision in such situation. And for sure, Alekhine didn't expect this. Any comments? e5, knight d5, d4, d6. So, main position of Alekhine defense. Okay, of course, Alekhine could try knight c3 here, provoke his opponent to play Vienna game after e5, bishop c4. But probably Max Euwe didn't plan to play e5. Probably his plan was to play d5 in this moment. I don't believe that d6 Pirt's defense was planned by Max Euwe against knight c3, so my version that he planned to play d5. About Kazakhstan, I'm not sure yet, okay, I'm still thinking about. So d5, and now I want to show line e5, knight e4, knight e2, d4, c3, d takes c3. That's a bad line for black. But tricky one. Queen a4, possible, but not the best. If queen takes e4, knight c5, and suddenly white is in big problem, because knight d3 is coming. It's trap. For example, queen d4, knight d3 check, king d1, queen takes d4, knight takes d4, c takes b2, bishop takes b2, knight takes b2, king c2, knight a4, bishop b5, bishop d7, e6. Now it's only important not take automatically, okay, so because if takes knight f3, white has quite serious compensation, but black is just better after takes and castle, so no, black is better. So knight takes c3, logical choice, instead queen takes e4. But now knight c5. To take on c3 is not so good because d takes c3 and bishop e3 and long castle coming. So knight c5, queen d1. Of course, black cannot take the pawn because d4 is coming. Yes, this is theory. So the best for black is c6, d4, knight e6, and playable position. For example, knight f3, knight b6, and then black plays g6, bishop g7, or knight c7, and bishop somewhere. Okay, theory is after b takes c3, simply b takes c3 is strong, and white has clear advantage because now queen a4 already threats, so black should play something like this, but of course white is better here. So this is theory. Another theoretical line is d4 here, or of course knight fd7. Knight fd7 can go to French defense. This line. But okay, so Alexander Alekhine played e5, d4, d6, c4 he played. Very solid line. Knight d7, yes, knight d7, it's possible. c4 he played. Okay, but Alekhine didn't play 4 pawns attack, so knight f3 is very solid line if white to play this. e6 and d4, well, it's possible, but according to theory, it's not so dangerous. d4, c5 is coming. Knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, g6. And this position is playable. Yes, Alekhine is white, so next game Max Euwe will be white. But in this game, it's 29. Alekhine is white. Euwe is black, so e5. So if white wants to play knight f3, bishop e2, usually white starts here. Knight f3 and bishop e2, and now black has two systems, e6 or c6. So c6, for example. Now if castle, there is a nice idea. Knight d2. Knight d7, rook e1, queen c7, knight c4. And if b5, bishop takes d5, c takes d5, knight d6, bishop takes d6, queen takes d5. Very beautiful motif. But okay, of course, this is not forced, so queen c7 not necessary to play. Black can play bishop e7, for example, with playable position. Or another attractive line for white is to play c4 and after knight b6, knight bd2, because take the pawn is extremely dangerous. So, for example, takes, this knight, queen takes d4, knight f3, this is extremely dangerous for black. And if bishop f5, knight f3 is coming, and also white has initiative in this position. Another line is e6, now castle, bishop e7, c4, knight b6, knight c3, castle, bishop e3. Or same with h3, bishop h5, for example, also possible to input this, and now say. Which bishop is better here? What do you mean? Which bishop? Where? So bishop e3, theoretical position, many games was played. Which bishop? Which bishop you mean? Bishop on e3 or on e2? Difficult, both bishops are good. Okay, but Alekhine played c4, knight b6, and now for pawns variation it's the most aggressive. And for example, this line is possible. And now king h1 is the best according to modern theory, because if queen c1, e5, d5, knight d4, takes, bishop takes g4, bishop g5, queen a1, bishop c2, rook d e1, black has contraplay. Maybe not bishop c2 immediately, maybe c5 here. It's more precise. Well, but Alekhine played knight f3, so this is a little bit strange for white, because if knight f3, I explained that better to play without c4. Yet now, Euwe principally played bishop g4. Also g6 was possible, because, for example, here after knight f3, g6, according to theory, c4 is possible, of course, but bishop c4 looks like more solid. And now black has choice between knight b6, bishop b3, bishop g7, knight g5, this line, or c6 also possible. But okay, bishop g4, bishop e2. Sorry, he played c4. Knight f3, bishop g4. So now black has contraplay. Because there is difference. I mean, if knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2, if black takes, white can take, and queen takes e2 with clearly better position. In the game, there is different story, because after c4, knight b6, knight f3, bishop g4, bishop e2 after take, so now knight takes e5, white is losing the pawn, and not so clear that compensation will be enough here. And for example, if castle, black just play knight bd7, takes with queen. Okay, white has some compensation, but it's not so obvious. So Alekhine played c5, very sharp line. e4 played Max Euwe. What else can be considered? Knight d7 can be considered, or knight d5 can be considered as well. c5 is nice. So, as I understand, he wants to play queen b3. So, if knight d5, he wants to play queen b3, as I understand. If e4, queen takes b7. Okay, maybe black can try b6 here. If knight d7, maybe also queen b3. Again, two threats. Queen takes b7, also knight g5 is very unpleasant threat for black. So Euwe plays e4, very logical. C takes b6, e takes f3, bishop takes f3, more or less forced, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. But now black has choice. So Euwe took the pawn, Also, there are other moves which is possible to consider. For example, c6 simply is possible. B takes a7, rook takes a7. Play this position. Positionally, black is very good, but some problem with development of pieces. For example, knight c3, e6, castle, bishop e7. It's a question if white has serious initiative here. Yes, it's very close to Scandinavian. So c6 was possible. If bishop e3, for example, rook can go back, or maybe also rook a5 is interesting. Okay, what else? Queen g3 or queen g4? Just castle. Bishop h6, bishop f6. If knight e4, bishop takes d4 is coming with idea f5. If rook d1, for example, knight d7. Now knight e4, king h8. This position looks like totally playable for black. Of course, white has no direct threat, so black can also consider simply take on a2 and king h8 on the next move. Yes, so c6 was totally possible and very solid line. Also knight c6 was possible probably. Well, it's more aggressive because pawn is attacked. With d5, knight b4 somehow. What is this? Probably it's good for black. If b takes c7, queen takes c7 is possible, but also queen takes d5 is possible to consider. I am not sure that pawn c7 is so strong. Maybe this is just weaker pawn. For example, queen c3, knight c6 simply. Castle e5, bishop d6 is coming. So knight c6 was also possible, or c6 was possible. But Max Euwe took on b6 simply. Certainly not the most aggressive. e5 or e6, e5 I wanted to play to prevent bishop f4. But maybe e6 is possible. So black has very tempting choice between c6, knight c6, and a takes b6. Okay, a takes b6, it's less aggressive, so I would prefer probably knight c6. B takes c7, queen takes c7, excellent for blacks. So d5, knight b4, and probably queen b3 now. But knight takes d5. If b takes c7, queen takes c7, bishop is hanging. So I have feeling that black is totally okay here. But Euwe took on b6. Queen takes b7, knight d7. Of course not knight a6 because queen c6. So knight d7, bishop f4. So, what is this? Max Euwe played e5, he gave the pawn. It's not necessary, in my opinion. For example, totally possible was to play e6. My idea to prepare bishop d6. For example, if knight c3, bishop d6. Bishop takes d6. Okay, if not bishop takes d6, black wants just castle, so takes. For example, knight b5 with threat to take on a8, so black has no time for d5, for example, because knight c7 also. But okay, this situation is pretty unclear, so black can just castle. Knight takes d6, knight f6. Immediately bishop takes c7. If bishop takes c7, queen c8 was my idea. Now queen takes c8 is only move, because queen c6, rook a7. White losing the piece, so queen takes c8 only move, rook takes c8, bishop f4, rook c2 is coming. It looks like totally okay for black. Okay, it's possible to continue this variation. Rook c1, but I don't think that this is really dangerous for black. Bishop e7, for example. Rook c8, bishop d8. Дуже вам дякую, вам теж гарних вихідних. And black is ready to castle, so looks like enough for equality. Okay, but Max Euwe played e5, also reasonable idea. Black is giving the pawn, but they will have reasonable compensation. So takes. Bishop b4, knight c3, takes. Castle, queen e7. Looks like quite modern style of pawn sacrifice. I'm not so sure about queen e7, however. Black has other promising options. For example, rook a5 is interesting option, or even queen c8. Immediately try to exchange queens. If white is taken on c8, rook c8, and then rook a5 is coming. If queen c6, for example, okay, black has several options, but I like rook a5 with idea to prepare rook c5, so looks like enough compensation for draw. But okay, queen e7 looks like totally normal move. Rook fe1. Again, of course, queen c5, I'm not sure that this is the best, so I like rook fd8, for example, or rook a5 or rook a3, so black has many attractive moves, but okay, not so easy to choose correct one if you have so many attractive moves. So Max Euwe played queen c5, probably not the best. Even g6 is possible, just prophylactic moves. Queen c5. Queen f3. White defended the pawn. Rook a5 losses. Why? Rook a5 is possible. pawn is attacked, so f4. Okay, g6, for example. Somewhere queen c5 and queen c3 or rook a8 is coming. Okay, so queen c5, rook e3, rook a3, queen f3. Yes, rook e8, h3. And now takes on e5 is probably bad because white has rook d1 and d8 square is very weak. So, and after g6, queen f6, white is just winning. If h6, also very dangerous. Maybe rook d8 is possible, also rook d7, so takes on e5, it's hardly good idea. Okay, rook f5, black not losing immediately, at least, however. So maybe rook d8 and takes on f7, takes on f7. But maybe it's still playable. Rook takes c3. How white can win this? Rook c1 mate is threat. So probably white has no way to win here. Okay, let's try to see more chaos. So rook takes e5. Of course, rook d1 is correct. h6 is correct. Maybe also h5 is possible as well, but okay, it's h5 not natural move. So position looks very dangerous, but I don't see how white can win, surprisingly. Okay, maybe rook d7 is if rook f5, queen e4 somehow. With idea g4. For example, if rook takes a2, g4 is coming. And black has serious problem. So rook d7, rook f5, queen e4. If g6, rook d8 check and queen e8 is coming. So this is very, very dangerous. Probably just losing for black. So, of course, Max Euwe didn't play such a dangerous way. He played rook a5. Another logical possibility was g6 somehow. But okay, he played rook a5. So rook d1, queen a7. So it's easy to see that black played bad in this period of game because firstly they played queen c5, then he came back to e7. Black lost many tempos. So if compare from this position, black could do something more useful than to play queen c5 and queen e7. But okay, so we'll see. So Alekhine had advantage, and problem how to realize this advantage. He played queen c6, not so obvious choice for me. So probably okay. Pawn e5 is hanging, but probably was possible to play queen e2, just defend pawn a2 and prepare f4. Somewhere also e6 can be idea. So black cannot take immediately to e5 for obvious reason. If, for example, g6, white can play f4. Also e6 is possible and try to play against the weak black king. So, for example, if this, to play c4, to prepare rook e d3, rook d7, something like this. Alekhine is white, yes. So next game, it will be last game of match. Max Euwe will be white. Or also possible to play f4. Okay, white has extra pawn and active position. Okay, it's very far from win, but so queen c6 is very strange choice for me because white is exchanging queens. So rook endgame is. Gives black more chances to survive than if white is playing with queens. So, in my opinion, it's a strange choice of Alekhine, queen c6 and queen d7. So, queen e2, in my opinion, was better. Yes, so, Max Euwe played g6, very natural move. f4, rook c4. Queen takes e7. I'm not sure as it was necessary to hurry with this. Probably g3 was possible. Not hurry with queen takes e7, but okay, he took and played rook d4, rook c5. So more or less classical rook endgame. So white has extra pawn, but difficult to win because if image that a2 and c3 will be exchanging against c7 and b6, so 4 against 3, it's usually draw. So king f2 playing Alekhine, c6, a4 playing Alekhine, rook a7, rook b4. b5. King f8. So typical situation for modern chess. White has extra pawn, but no real chances for win. But okay, Alekhine played g4. It's strange for me. In my opinion, more logical was to play rook d3 somehow. After king e7, king e3 to prepare king d2. I think if rook c4, for example, g3. And king d2 is coming, and white can try to do something against pawn b5 in future. g4, it's not attractive because white exchanging too many pawns, so f6, and now it's obvious draw. Everything is draw. Black can take on e5, f5, also rook e5 is drawish, or just takes on f5 and king g5. This is also draw. So I don't see any ideas for white to play for win here. But okay, rook c4 was choice of Max Euwe, totally reasonable. Draw. So Alekhine defense against Alekhine was successful. Euwe made draw. And now Euwe is white, and in last game he needs only draw. He played d4, d5, c4, d takes c4, knight f3. So he doesn't want to play e3, e5, knight c6. Okay, in that period, knight c6 wasn't a theory, so e takes d4 was main theory, and now after knight f3, it's very important to play bishop b4 check, because if play knight f6, queen b3, it's immediately very bad for black. After bishop b4 position is totally acceptable for black. After bishop d2 takes knight f6. Although d takes e3 probably is possible as well. It's a little bit more risky. So knight c6, knight f3, e4, knight d2, queen g5 is theory. Or just f5 is possible as well. So after knight f3, Alekhine played a quite strange move, knight d7. So usually black doing something else here. For example, there is interesting variation. a6, e3, bishop g4, bishop takes c4, e6. After d5, e takes d5, bishop takes d5, white has two threats. Bishop takes b7 is threat, and bishop takes f7, check is threat, because the black queen is not protected. And the best for black is to play queen e7, smart move. Protect against both of threats. Pawn f7 is protected by direct way. Pawn b7 is protected because queen b4 check is coming. So white cannot take on b7. And now, for example, queen d4, queen b4, queen takes b4, bishop takes b4, bishop d3. Why queen d6 worse instead of queen e7? Probably because check is possible. After bishop d7, another check. But okay, I'm not pretty sure. Knight e7, bishop takes b7, rook a7. Probably white has some problem with his bishop. I'm thinking. Oh, of course, after queen d6, queen b3 is possible as well. And now queen b4 is only move, and white should be better. But probably nothing special. For example, this bishop takes b3, knight c6. Yes. Okay, so queen a4 we can consider bishop d7, queen e4, knight e7. Okay, maybe white just can play knight c3. Knight c3, f5 also is possible, and then knight takes d5. So bishop takes b7 is principle, but also now f5 is possible to attack white queen immediately, and only then to play rook a7. It looks like white just losing his bishop here. No, queen d4 now. Queen d4 is strong. Because rook a7 is stopped, after queen takes d4, knight takes d4, and bishop f3. So f5 is bad move. So rook a7 is correct move. And now black has two threats, f5 or c6. And probably white is in big trouble. Okay, I have another idea. So knight c3. But black can just play knight c6 probably. If knight g5, f5, situation's very far from clear. Bishop f7, king d8. What is this? My idea was if f5 to play queen e5. This was my idea. So after takes, takes, after takes, takes, and after bishop d6, knight c4. So this was my idea, and now it's very pleasant for white. But knight c6, knight g5. f5, bishop f7 check, king d8, queen h4 probably. Something like this. Maybe white is better here. For example, if knight e5, I can just castle. And if h6, I can play bishop b3 and enjoy with my position. Okay, maybe rook d1 is even stronger. Rook d1 is strong with idea knight e6 after queen f6. So queen d6 is risky because queen a4. So queen e7 is correct move, and now important trap. So if queen d4, queen b4, takes, bishop d2, bishop takes d2, knight takes d2. Very important that black has c6 and okay, if bishop b3, knight d7. Nothing special for white, but important that bishop takes f7 is mistake. Bishop takes f7, king f7, knight e5, king e6, knight takes g4, h5. White is losing his knight. So it's quite important trap for this variation. But okay, so knight d7 played Alekhine, and now very natural for white is to play e4. So if b5, a4 is coming, it's obviously unpleasant for black. So knight b6 is only logical, and now bishop takes c4, the simplest, although totally possible to play in this style. So bishop e2, bishop e3, knight e5. Anyway, black has no possibility to defend his pawn c4, and white will be obviously better. For example, this, bishop b4, f3, and then knight takes c4 is coming. But the simplest is just take, and after knight takes c4, queen a4 check, and white is better, very solid position. But Euwe played queen a4. Now theoretical line is knight f6, knight c3, e6, e4, a6, bishop c4, rook b8, queen c2, b5, and one of my games was bishop e2. I played with black, and I promote knight here. This is trick. Against Chinese player, I don't remember exactly name. It was World Chess Championship in Lucerne many years ago. So I played this. But okay, of course, strong is bishop d3, bishop b7, bishop f4, rook c8, d5. It's a lot of theory. Ideal on castle. Well, but c6 played Alekhine, c6 less logical. Queen takes c4. Now white has quite comfortable game. g3. g6. Of course, if image different match situation, and image that Alexander Alekhine wants to equalize the game, of course he would play e5 here. This is objectively the best move. And now the point, if d takes e5, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, queen a5 check. If queen c3, bishop b4, of course. So knight c3, queen takes e5, bishop g2, and I don't know, queen c5 somehow. And black has good chances to equalize the position. But I have no doubt that Alekhine have seen this idea, but he wasn't optimistic about winning chances for black in this position, and he is right. So black is fighting only for equality. But for equality, they have a good chance. See this, for example. So this more or less forced variation. So knight takes e5 the same. Yes, so e5 was normal move, but Alekhine played g6. Okay, so now knight on d7, it's a little bit wrong place. For example, if image different position, I mean d4, knight f6, c4, g6, knight f3, bishop g7, g3, c6, bishop g2, d5, queen b3, d takes c4, queen takes c4, castle, castle. Usually black is playing bishop f5 here, and only after knight c3, knight bd7. Now black bishop f5 is active, not allow e4, and this is playable position for black. But in game, black has knight on d7, so it doesn't work so good. Queen a5, another strange move. White can fight against e5, for example, bishop f4 is possible. If knight d5, even bishop d2 is possible, or just take on d5, so bishop f4 was a reasonable idea. But e4, and again, the most logical for black was e5, try to play this structure, but the standard position is more pleasant for white a little bit, but no, nothing special. So white can play rook d1, for example, e takes d4, knight takes d4, something like this. So queen h5, strange idea. Queen d3. It looks like white is preparing knight e2. So idea of queen d3 is to protect pawn e4. Of course, white can just ignore black's threats. It even doesn't difficult to call threats. So queen e2, for example, was possible. After e5, just knight takes e5, queen takes. Sorry, knight takes e5 is only move. Now white can take on h5, takes on e5, play bishop e3 to prepare f4. Or after e5, just play rook d1, maybe even more attractive. Knight g4, where knight g4? Knight g4 not. Rook d1 is totally possible. After e takes d4, just knight takes d4. So queen takes e2 forced, knight d takes e2, and white has more pleasant position. Probably nothing special, but black has no contraplay. So, for example, if rook e8, f4, and e5 is coming, a pleasant position for white. But okay, queen d3, again, obviously that black should play e5 here. Early, but where knight g4? So where you want to play knight g4? Can you explain? Of course, was nothing. Now white to move. I can play bishop f4, for example. I like bishop f4. Why not? To stop e5. Because if e5, I will take with bishop. So knight g4, knight g4, h3 simply, and so bishop f4 was an excellent move, probably the best in this position. And white is obviously better because of strong center. Probably only idea is h6 to prepare g5 somehow. If h3, knight b6 is important, so white cannot do it immediately, but let's see. Okay, but white can play, for example, rook f e1. If g5, bishop c7, I don't like knight e8. And white has problem because bishop d8, knight d6, if bishop a5, g4. But after g5, white can just go back with good position. Okay, black can try e5, this idea, if d takes e5, knight g4, something like this. But d5, nothing wrong for white. Okay, so Max Euwe played queen d3. Now e5 was logical, but it wasn't what Alekhine wanted, but objectively, of course, he should play e5. He played strange move, knight b6 and knight e2. So idea of Max Euwe in action. So pawn e4 is protected, bishop h3 doesn't work because knight f4, and black has obvious problem with his queen and also problem in center. So rook d8, a4. So he wants to play a5. And also knight f4 is all. Bishop g5. Now bishop g5. Possible. But maybe e5 now is possible. Sorry. And not so simple. White cannot take on e5 immediately. Black wants to play h6, the next move after queen c2, for example. So a4, black Max Euwe played better because now he has threat to play a5. And knight f4, so black has no b5 square for his queen anymore. So knight d7 and b4. Now knight f4 is threat. So e5 is only reasonable choice for black. If d takes e5, knight g4, but d takes e5 is not forced. So white can do something else probably. For example, I like rook d1. E takes d4, knight f4. Knight e5 is only move, but it's losing. If queen h6, knight e6. If queen g4, h6. So rook d1 is very nice. And black has no defense against many threats. It's important to play rook d1 to protect white queen, because, for example, if immediately h3, e takes d4, g4, knight e5 is coming. The queen is not protected. Okay, so, but anyway, e5 was only practical chance. Rook d1 is strong, of course. If d takes e5, knight g4, black has at least idea. If knight f4, knight e5, knight h5, this also possible, probably bishop g5. But after bishop g5, this black has at least extra pawn, although white has totally enough compensation. Knight d4 or a5. Knight g7, knight c1, rook fc1. This endgame more pleasant for white, much more pleasant for white, and without any chances for win for black. Okay, so Alekhine played g5, but this is total desperation because now black has pawn down and no contraplay. Of course, bishop takes g5 was possible as well. Nothing wrong. Knight e5 is possible, but white has healthy pawn. Good. But knight takes g5 looks better because black still has problem with his queen. Queen b3 somewhere threats. Knight e5, queen c2. Nothing wrong with queen b3. Immediately attack f7 pawn. Probably this was the easiest way for win. After queen takes e2, d takes e5, and black can resign. So queen b3 was strong, but queen c2 is good enough as well. Knight g6, h3, bishop f3 is threats. So Alekhine is trying to do something, but he is without chances. He is 2 pawns down and bad position. Rook g8. Rook f1. Now rook h2 is threat, so during the whole of this game, black has big problem with his queen. If knight h4, the simple refutation is queen takes e6 and knight f4 check. So, he played this, so, okay. Okay, I don't think he missed this, but he has no ideas against rook h2 anymore. And he is just 2 pawns down. Already 3 pawns down, so game is over. Black can resign here, but so this was the end of match. Alekhine offered a draw, and Euwe accepted and became 5th world champion. So I finished my report about 30 games of this match. I hope my spectators were enjoyed with this. Okay, if there are any wishes, it's possible to continue match revanche in 1937 because it quite for me it's quite interesting to follow both of these players when they are playing against each other. So I totally agree that Euwe was hard opponent for Alekhine. And he was a good player, especially in opening preparation and like a tactical player. You never watched Euwe, okay? Now everything is possible to see. use mega database, you can use chessgames.com and many other things. So Euwe was good player for sure. Okay, this game was objectively not so strong for black, but anyway, it's interesting. So knight d7, it's not line which I recommend. Another interesting line is c5 here. If, for example, d5, e6, knight c3, e takes d5, queen takes d5, queen takes d5, knight takes d5, bishop d6, knight d2, knight c6, knight takes c4, bishop b8. It's my game against Alexander Grishchuk. I won with black. But Indian player Lalit played e4 here. It's also possible because if, for example, knight f6, bishop takes c4 and knight takes e4, now castle, and this is very risky for black. So e takes d5 and I play bishop d6 and now queen e2 check. Situation is not easy for black. So, for example, queen e7, just take, king take, castle. Rook e1 is coming, rook d8, knight c3. More pleasant for white to play in this position. Another similar line I played against Vichy Anand, so I played here knight f6, knight c3, e6, e4. No, it was different move orders. So I played this. I played here a6 against Vichy Anand. Alekhine and Nemtsovich, okay, I can prepare something. a6, yes, I played, and after a4, knight f6, e4, e takes d5, e takes d5, bishop b6, bishop takes c4, castle, castle, bishop g4, h3. Black has quite comfortable position. But the problem is that after a6, e4 is strong. And now after b5, a4 is coming. After b4, d takes e6. This is very important trick. And white is better now. Because if queen takes d1, knight takes d1, bishop takes e6, knight g5. If after d takes e6, bishop, of course, b takes c3, a takes f7, it's very bad. Against Weiye, my match against Weiye, 6 games. Good idea. Okay, I will write for myself. Ivanchuk Weiye. And what was other? Alekhine against Nemtsovich. So b takes c3 is bad. So bishop takes e6, this, and knight d5, and this position is clearly better for white. So bishop takes d5, e takes d5, and then bishop takes c4. So surely white is better here. So e4 is stronger than a4. Okay, what else? Queen's gambit accepted. So knight f3. If this line, if black wants to play just this, so it's not so easy. Knight c3, knight d7, rook e1. For white it's important not play h3, because bishop g4 is not threat. So, for example, if white plays h3 now, this, c6, and knight bd5, and then bishop e6, this is acceptable for black. But rook e1 is much stronger. White is not wasting time for h3. And if knight b6, bishop b3. So bishop g4 is not threat because simply h3 is possible. And bishop f3, queen takes f3, it's pretty good for white. If bishop h5, g4, and knight e5, very unpleasant. h4 is coming. Very unpleasant for black, I mean. So c6 is natural move. And now bishop g5. This is the point of white strategy. And again, if bishop g4, h3, g4, knight e5 is coming, and very important that after knight d5, white has this idea. Knight takes d5. If take this pawn, black is without contraplay. If knight takes d5, rook takes e7. This is very important to know this idea. It's very standard idea. Knight takes e7 only move. Okay, f6 is possible, but at least white can play rook e5 with extra pawn and much better position. So rook takes e7, knight takes e7, and queen e2. And now what to do? So bishop e6. If rook e8, just rook e1 is coming. Bishop takes e7 is threat. So if king f8, knight e5, white is just winning, because not only pawn f7 is attacked, also white has threat queen h5. So the best for black is to play here bishop e6. The best chance. Bishop takes s6 takes, rook f7, knight e5, queen d5. Well, black is not losing immediately, but white has pawn up and good chances for it. White can take on d5 with queen or take on f7. 1930, okay. It was French defense, right? So white can take on f7 or takes on d5. Okay, it's not easy to win yet, but obviously black is suffering. So I wanted to show idea with rook takes e7. This ending with Tuxwan, because it was another famous French game, so it was also game e4, e6, d4, d5, knight c3, bishop b4, knight e2. D takes e4, a3, also between Alekhine and Nimzovich played f5, bad move, so according to theory, knight c6 is correct move, but Nimzovich played f5, knight c6 is correct move. Nimzovich played f5, f3, e takes f3, queen takes f3, queen takes d4 he played, and now queen g3 was played, something like this. Also, probably bishop e3 was even stronger. Okay, so in this time theory was a little bit different than now, and now everybody knows that knight c6 is necessary to play, and after bishop b5, knight g7, after bishop g5, f6, after bishop e3 castle, after queen d2, probably f5 is not f5. F5 is risky because after castle a6, bishop takes c6, and f3, white has good compensation for the pawn. But the best for black is a6 here. a6 is stronger. And after bishop c6, knight takes c6, knight takes e4, b6. And then bishop b7, queen d7, knight e7, black has no problem at all. Okay, so thanks for your attention. For today, I think it's enough. I finished much Alekhine Euwe, and I will continue my reports. So please write me your wishes. Okay, I wrote about my match against Euwe. Okay, so some matches I started, but I didn't finish yet. I don't know when I will stream again, but certainly I will continue this of my activity. Goodbye. Good night. Українцям всім доброї ночі, тримаємося, боремося. Дякую за увагу.